to our channel. Today we are going to teach you how to use interaction panels. This panel is for advanced users, but we will also show some practical examples which can be used by everyone. Interaction panel interface is very intuitive. You just select trigger and action which you can attach to trigger. You can attach unlimited actions to trigger and unlimited layers. By default, interactions are enabled only for front-end part, but you can click on power icon to enable it also in editor. It's important to mention that it's always better to check work on front-end part because editor can have different layers which are required for Gutenberg panels. Let's try simple but most common used interactions when you add class on click. Let's see how it works. When you click on trigger element, action is running. In our scenario, it's action to add class. By default, trigger and action are added to element where you added interaction layers, but power of this feature is that you are not limited in this. Let's add local classes to several items. We will use these classes to make the same interactions dynamically. Now, in your interaction layer panel for first element, select custom selector for trigger and set the same class which you added to several items. Don't forget that classes in CSS are started with dot. Let's check how it works. Click on element where you placed your click class and you will see that action is also working here, even in fact that this block has no interaction layers. So, if you have the same actions and triggers, you don't need to create layers for each block and you can use custom selectors. Greenshift plugin has powerful class and variable system and you can use it to build no-code custom interactions. Usually, you will need to create local class and attach custom subselector to it. For example, we made action to add active class, so I will create the same subselector for our class and attach design to it. Highly likely that you will use CSS transformation styles. I add some and attach to our active class. You can also click on view icon to disable class from editor to compare design with class and without. Logic is next. When someone click on our block, active class is attached with your styles which you attach to this class. As mentioned early, you are not limited to elements and you can make trigger on one element but apply action on another. For example, I create new class on element and attach active subselector to it. I attach also some styles to this active subselector just for testing purposes. Now, in my interaction rules I select custom selector for actions. You can place here your selector manually or use our selector builder to find classes from blocks on page in case if you have a lot of elements and forgot name of classes. So, in element tree, I found my second block and select class from block. Let's see what happens now. After click, you get interaction attached to second block as expected. Let's do something more practical, for example custom menu with effect. And for this, I prefer to make menu as pattern. In this way it will not conflict with items on page and I can control it in separate space. I will use two-columned menu space and for this I will use CSS grid block. I will make it as full height and full width. Now, I will add different colors to left and right columns. Also, I will remove any gap between columns so they will be merged together. You can easily assign colors and images in background panel of each block. In the second panel, I will attach also image. I need to make some changes in background. First of all, disable repeatable background option and set image to contain fully in container. I also change focus point to make background image always in right area. Now, in left panel I will add my menu items. I will use advanced text block for this. I will use fluid typography because it's best way to keep sizes better for each resolution. If I need link, I click on link icon in toolbar and add my link. For now, I set special symbol for testing purposes. If you need to disable link underline, you can do this in advanced typography option. Now, I just copy my text and add more items in menu. Now, I need to enable flexible align, and easiest way to do this is toolbar. I also need to add some padding in my container. Now, let's add some animations with help of class system. And first of all, I need to add classes to main wrapper and for each column. In columns I will add 2 classes. One will be common for both columns and one will be unique for each column. We need this because I want to add different animation effects for each side. If you need the same effect, then one class will be enough. Now, I will add starting point for each side. I will attach it to our unique classes with help of CSS transform panel. For left side I will set shift on y-axis by -100%. And for right side I will do the same but with opposite value. Now, I need to hide overflowed elements from block. And for this we need to enable hidden overflow in spacing panel. And the last part is to add activation class. And I will add it on our main wrapper with subselectors. The logic is next. Once main wrapper has active class, then, all inner items with menu panel class will have specific styles. And for this styles I will set 0 value for shifting. This will disable our shifting which we set earlier. And we can test this if we add active class on block. But let's set this activation class with interaction layers dynamically. So, we will create new page and add their button which will trigger activation class. I will use icon block for this purpose. For testing, I will add also our template on page. Now, let's add interactions to our button. I will use click trigger and toggle class for actions. Toggle means that one click will add class and next click will remove this class from element. I need also to add custom selector for action and set here class of our menu wrapper. As we can see, trigger button will activate menu as we expected. But more practical in such scenarios will be to use shortcode of reusable template instead whole block. In this way, it doesn't take space on page and you can place it in any space of page. Visit reusable template section and simply copy and paste shortcode. On front end of site you should see no difference. Now, we need to add also close button inside panels. I will use again icon box. Let me select specific icon and change colors and sizes. Now, click on Special Drag icon in Toolbar and this will enable absolute position for element. And to make it as close trigger, I will use interaction layers with click option and remove class action. For better accessibility, I will add also link to icon and title. Let's add some more tweaks to our setup. Problem here is that our initial menu is hidden, but it will be not productive to add trigger class inside admin panel to open menu. So, you can limit our styles only to front. In this way our menu is visible in admin area and we can easily modify it. And on front-end part, it's working as expected and hidden on initial loading. Also, I don't like that menu is dropped below my button. I want it to cover whole screen. For this, I need to make it fixed and take whole space from each side. There is specific hack for this in CSS by adding 0 value to all sides. Don't forget to limit styles only be front. Also, it's very important to enable pointer events for not active menu container as none. Otherwise, this block will be hidden but will overflow whole screen, so every click will work on this hidden block instead of page elements. In the same time, we need to enable events when block is active. So, I think it's working as expected now, and you can place your trigger button and template shortcode in any place of your page. But to make this menu perfect, we can tweak it even more. Let's add also animations to inner elements. Idea is the same. You set styles for initial value, for example 0 opacity, and then set another for active state. For now, I just set the same class to all elements which I will animate. Now, I will add styles to my main wrapper. I will animate movement by y-axis and opacity. Now, add active state for this class, and here I set opacity as 1 and movement to 0. It's important to add also some delay, because we have animation for menu, and if you have animation on inner elements, it will play in the same time so user will not see it. Okay, it's working but it's a bit boring, so I want to have letters to appear one after another. And to do this, I just need to set different delay for each element. You can do this by settings transition delay on each item or simply by using special pseudoclass nthchild. I will save time and do this in background, but at least you know idea. Each next child will have a bit more delay. And that's what we have now. Let's see final results. Okay. Let's make another example, and in this time we will make custom tabs. Greenshift plugin has tabs block, but we will make custom one with interaction panels. Good thing about custom tabs is that you can make tabs from any block and content can be in any place. Let's add container and set position to be relative, so other elements will work related to parent container. Let's drop another few containers inside. You can use absolutely any block, but for testing purposes I will show containers. Now, we need to add styles to container. Because we will animate these styles with interaction layers, we need to attach styles to class system instead of local attributes. So, in class I will add height and position. I will use the same tweak which we used before to set absolute positioned element to fit whole available space. Also, I add some options for better background control. Now, I simply duplicate container and add another background to each one. Also, I need to set 0 index for our class, and also I need to create active subselector. Set bigger index for subselector. In this way, container which has active class will be higher than others. We can test this if we add active class to one of our container. Let's add controller for our tabs. It can be anything, but we will use images as examples. It's also important to add parent item for our triggers, and I will explain why few minutes later. I will add some negative margin for more interesting effect, but again, benefit of making custom interactions is that you are not limited in how you design your elements. Now add the same class to all our trigger elements. We will use it in our interaction panels. Here we add interaction and set custom trigger selector, and then we need to add two actions. First action will remove active class from all our blocks. And second action will add active class to specific item. And here we will use special pseudoclass feature with dynamic trigger index. Let me explain. Remember, we placed our trigger in container, which will be common parent for our triggers. When we did this, each our trigger will have own order number. The same we have for our containers for actions. It's more clear where we see in our navigator. Our special trigger index will add our animations to the same index for action selectors. So, first trigger item will add action to first action container. Second trigger will add animation to second action container. Without this trigger index feature, we will need to attach separate interaction layer to each of our trigger and action container. And I forget to add z-index to our triggers to ensure that they are always on top of images. Let's view and explain again whole logic. All our blocks have absolute position and 0 z-index. We added active class to our first block which adds z-index, and this puts current image to top of all other images. When we click on our trigger, this will take current index of trigger and add animation to the same index of our action containers. But we are not limited to animate only z-index, we can animate any property, for example opacity. What we need is just set options to initial class and to active class. Speed of animation can be controlled by transition time and by delay option. We added this interactions just for testing purposes. If you deal with images, more practical will be to use slider block. And interaction panels can be used to control slider. So, let's make some changes. First of all, we will remove our images and place slider block instead. Now, we can add images to slider in special panel. We need to change height of slider to fit out previous design. Also, we don't need arrows and bullet points, so let's remove them. Now we need to add class to our parent element. This class will help interaction layers to find our slider block. I copied class, so we will use it in interactions. Now, I remove previous interactions and add special action for slider. Again, I will use trigger index placeholder to dynamically detect number of slide to show. Don't forget to insert also custom selector where you have slider. Cool, it's working. Now our triggers control sliders. Good thing in sliders is that it has a lot of ready effects and you can easily make own in custom effect panel. One of my favorite is parallax effect. To make it better, I also disable margin between sliders. I think it looks awesome. And interesting thing that you can attach unlimited actions. For example, the same click can control tabs in one place and slider in another place. And don't forget that our slider is also working as container and you can add any other blocks inside. But let's move to next example, floating panels. And for this, I create very simple panel in end of page. Now we need to wrap it with container and add styles for floating panel. We need to set fixed position at bottom and CSS transform as 100%, which will hide panel below the screen. Don't forget to enable option to use these styles only for frontend, so panel will be still visible in editor. Now for subselector, set active class and set to have 0 shifting in CSS transform. Our container will be triggered an action container, so setup is very easy. I need to select scroll distance below specific value to add class and opposite, scroll distance above will remove class. Let's see how it looks. I think it's working, but for our footer, black color of panel is not visible. So I need to change colors. Also, I forgot to add z-index, which will put my container above other elements on page. And I think it's working great now. Let's move to another example where we will use dynamic elements. Interaction panels can be used not only for static elements but also for dynamic fields. In my example, I have repeater field in ACF plugin, which I plan to use as question-answer dynamic block. It has 2 fields, question and answer. And these fields are repeatable and unique for each post. In Greenshift we have accordion block, but it has no dynamic data option, so let's build on block with interaction panels and repeater builder. Let's start with repeater builder block. It's important to mention that this block uses dynamic data which is taken from current post. So, you need to make sure that your current post has saved custom field data. If you use block in template builder, then data from latest item will be used, so you need to make sure that latest post has dynamic data. For now, we will remove all predefined items and start from zero design. Let's add our container wrapper and set class to it. Now, we will add another 2 containers. One will be for our title and second will be for our answer. We add classes to both of them. Now, to retrieve data from dynamic field, we will use universal meta query block and enable repeater data option in it. We need to tweak some design options. In our scenario, we will change typography size and spacing. Also, we add border to our wrapper. Let's do the same for answer. But it's important to add spacing not to container but to meta getter. This is because we will animate visibility of this section and we will not need spacing on parent block when it's hidden. Also, we need top border to separate answer from question. We already have good start and many of you will leave it without animation, but we want to show how to use interaction layers. Let's add also icon, which will be also animated. Let's start to add interactions. First of all, we need to hide our answers. For this, we will use max height option and set it to 0. In this way, our block will have 0 height. Also, we need to add hidden overflow. Now, set subselector and add active class. Our block will have max height as 1000 when it's active. This will disable 0 height and block will use own height of text. We can test if it's correct if we add active class here. Now, it's time to add interaction layers. We will use our question container as trigger. First action will add active class to our question container. And second action will add active class to answer container. But, we don't want to add active class to all containers, we need to add it only to that container which belongs to the same section where our trigger. And for this purposes we have special option to limit by closest selector. So, I added selector of our parent block where we have our question and answer. Here I made mistake in name of class, but you can always return and set proper name in field because it's editable. Okay, our interactions are working, we just need few tweaks to add also animation to icon. For this purpose, I will use rotation by z-axis. And I think it's working as expected. I will leave code of this dynamic FAQ block in description of video so you can copy it if you want to build the same. Don't forget to replace names of your fields in dynamic areas. And that's all of today. We will make more videos about interaction panel in future, but I hope you can understand its logic now. God bless you and your site and see you in next video.